Welcome to NTD News. I'm Kevin Hogan. Here are today's top stories. New updates on the Boulder, Colorado shooter. The suspect had a history of rage, and he bought the assault weapon less than a week before the shooting. How are the residents coping after the tragedy? North Korea conducts its first missile test since President Joe Biden takes office. Biden calls the test business as usual. We hear the Pentagon's response. Migrant protection groups say smugglers are encouraging parents to send their children to the U.S. alone. They say it's because of President Biden's policy changes. What did initial talks between the U.S. and Mexico bring? President Trump reveals what he wrote to Biden in a note before he left office. Biden never mentioned the contents publicly. And the House of Representatives holds a hearing on D.C. statehood. Democrats push for the district to become the 51st state. That would likely give Democrats 2 more senators. Republicans say it's a power grab. Mexico says they haven't come to an agreement with the U.S. on what to do about the migrant surge yet. Talk started yesterday, and the discussion is expected to continue.
The United States and Mexico discussed ways to tackle the recent jump in migrant arrivals Tuesday. It comes as Mexico deploys nearly 9,000 troops to its southern and northern borders to prevent migrants from reaching the U.S. border. Mexico says President Biden's change in policy has made people think it's easier to enter the U.S. There was no immediate comment from the White House on the outcome of the discussions with Mexico. Further U.S. talks on migration are due to take place in Guatemala. Since Biden's policy changes, the number of migrant children entering the U.S. illegally has doubled in the last month. Some children come with friends or relatives, but others are left only to the care of human traffickers.
They come with what they call a guide, but in reality, there are people who charge families money to bring children to this point, and even cross them into the United States. This is something we definitely want to stop.
Migrant protection groups say smugglers are encouraging parents to send their children alone as a result of the shift in U.S. policy.
Unfortunately, the smugglers are using all this information to get money out of families.
The Biden administration released footage Tuesday showing crowded migrant detention centers in Texas. The U.S. is struggling to house and process the growing number of children. Republican lawmakers criticize Biden over the surge in migrants.
This is Joe Biden's crisis. He created it by his policies. Republicans have common sense solutions that would actually reverse this immediately. And it involves securing the border, enforcing the laws, and restoring the Remain in Mexico orders.
Senator Rick Scott says Biden's leaving other people to deal with the problem he created.
These governors like Governor Ducey are dealing with this crisis. They're dealing with people coming across the border, their ranchers are getting impacted, their businesses are getting impacted. Joe Biden needs to get down there and solve the problem.
He says Biden needs to get down to the border and solve the problem.
North Korea conducts a new round of missile tests. It's the country's first test since Joe Biden became president. White House officials say they're open to negotiate.
South Korea's defense ministry says North Korea fired 2 cruise missiles on Sunday. The missile tests follow recent threats from North Korean officials. The threats came in anticipation of South Korea and the U.S. holding joint military exercises. Kim Yo-jong, sister of North Korea's leader, issued the threats. She warned the new U.S. administration not to cause a problem. Biden says the missile tests are nothing new.
According to the Defense Department, it's business as usual. There's no new wrinkle in what they did.
Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby says North Korea threatens the region.
It's Pyongyang, it's Kim Jong-un that is threatening security and stability on the peninsula and the region through his weapons of mass destruction and his nuclear program, and that's what we're focused on.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken asked China to pressure North Korea over its nuclear weapons program. North and South Korea are technically still at war. Kirby says the U.S. wants to negotiate peace.
We all want to see a responsible end to this war that is sustainable and that's based on a negotiated political settlement. That's what we're all driving to.
Relations between the U.S. and North Korea improved during the previous administration. Former President Trump met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un 3 times. North Korea appears to have halted nuclear and long-range missile tests since 2017. Biden administration officials say they've reached out to North Korea asking for dialogue. They say there hasn't been a response.
Former President Donald Trump reveals what he wrote to President Joe Biden when he left office in January. Biden never spoke publicly about the contents. In an interview on The Truth with Lisa Booth, he said the letter was a couple pages long and that he wished Biden good luck. Trump added that he wants Biden to do well, but that doesn't mean shutting down the Keystone Pipeline. Biden shut down the project the same day he took office. Trump hinted that Biden could be trying to enrich business for Warren Buffett, a Biden supporter, by having oil brought in on trains instead. Biden never made reference to the contents of the letter during interviews in January, but called it very generous. New information has come out about the Colorado shooter. It turns out the suspect was prone to rage and delusions. Apparently, he got the assault weapon he used 6 days before the shooting. And on top of that, police had prior encounters with him.
Law enforcement officials gave information on 20-year-old Ahmad Alissa, who was accused of killing 10 people in Boulder, Colorado on Monday. They said he was prone to sudden rage and was believed to suffer from mental illnesses, including from delusions. And he was even suspended from high school for a sudden attack that left one of his schoolmates bloodied.
Over the past few years, we've had a few contacts with the suspect. Those cases were in 2017, an assault that occurred in reference to a fight or an incident at Arvada West High School. In that case, the subject was issued a citation by the school resource officer for assault, intimidation, and menacing.
Alissa had purchased an assault weapon just 6 days before the attack, according to an arrest affidavit obtained by the Associated Press. Investigators do not know where he purchased the weapon or his motive. The detective says officers train for tragic situations like these, where there is a loss of life and officers are asked to go in.
In this case, tragically, Officer Talley was lost during attempting to save officers at the King Soopers. Our full support is with the Boulder Police Department and the Boulder community, because the community also lost a tragic amount of people in this case. Our community obviously is upset and concerned as the suspect lived here, but we want to reassure the community that we're doing everything that we can, that we're out there, we're here and available.
In 1999, 2 teens went on a shooting spree at Columbine High School, killing 13 people. The former principal of the school says the mass shooting in Boulder has people in Colorado traumatized again.
And I think in Colorado, we've seen things, Columbine, we've seen the Aurora Theater shooting, STEM Academy, Platte Canyon. We've seen so many, Planned Parenthood. And now it's to the point that we're in the state of, I think, disbelief. But I think the most important thing moving forward, and we're reaching out to help them.
The victims of the attack include store staffers, a police officer, and a photographer. A memorial was set up outside a yoga and accessories shop owned by one of the shooting victims. Ahmad Alissa was booked into jail on Tuesday on murder charges, the day following the attack on the King Soopers grocery store in Boulder. His first court appearance is set for Thursday.
The police officer who lost his life responding to the shooting is being celebrated as a hero. The Boulder police chief says 51-year-old Eric Talley didn't have to go into policing, but says Talley felt he had a higher calling to do so. Our sympathies go to Talley's widowed wife and the 7 children he left behind. As the nation reels from the tragic shootings in Georgia and Colorado, there's talks of gun reform, including banning certain types of guns. But not everyone believes these policies will help curb the violence on our streets.
Many lawmakers are calling for major gun reform, including banning assault rifles. The White House says President Biden may even take executive action on gun control. But several gun rights advocates say that the current narrative doesn't give the complete picture.
If you're frustrated by what's going on in society with gun violence, I get it. But taking guns away from people is not the solution.
Philip Smith is the national president for the National African American Gun Association. He says that many perpetrators of gun violence have a criminal history, and they don't typically get their guns legally. Tighter gun control, he says, will only make it harder for law-abiding citizens to get access to guns. Many don't want guns to end up in the wrong hands.
If you're really anti-gun, you need to look at the reasons why people are using those guns. But most people don't want to do that because that takes a heavy lift and detailed looking at the social institutions that are in place that are causing people to be desperate to sell drugs and to rob each other.
Another advocate warns of the larger implications of gun control.
I think the long-term goal is to have a pliable,
group of citizens that you can do whatever you want to them because they have no ability to fight back.
And what impact this can have on Americans' freedom.
When the Second Amendment goes, if you think you've got a First Amendment, kiss it goodbye. You think you got a Fourth Amendment, kiss that goodbye.
Anthony Medina witnessed the communist revolution in Nicaragua before he came to the United States. He remembers how the communist leaders also took away people's right to bear arms as they came into power, and says taking away the Second Amendment could have a similar impact.
So they can then turn around and legally or create a law that will be then executed to then take the arms away.
Another gun advocate echoes the idea that gun rights are tied to freedom.
I think that if we lose our right to keep and bear arms, we're going to lose a lot of other rights, because I think once the government knows they've disarmed law-abiding citizens, then they've got free reign to do whatever they want to us.
He says once the government knows they've disarmed law-abiding citizens, then they've got free reign to do whatever they want.
A committee in the House of Representatives held a hearing on making Washington, D.C. a state. Advocates say D.C. residents lack fair representation in Congress, while critics say it's a power grab. The House Oversight and Reform Committee held a hearing on making Washington, D.C. a state. Advocates say D.C. residents don't have the same rights as citizens from other states. Josh Birch is an advocate for D.C. statehood. He says D.C. residents deserve equal treatment.
If we fulfill all obligations of citizenship, we should be treated equally, and that's what statehood does. It treats us equally in the Union.
D.C. voters get electoral votes for president. They have one non-voting delegate in Congress and no senators. Zach Smith is a legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. He says this is how the Founding Fathers planned it.
The framers envisioned the District of Columbia as being a separate federal city.
He says the Constitution spells out how D.C. is to function.
This is something both Democratic and Republican Justice Departments that have looked at this issue have said it requires a constitutional amendment in order for D.C. to become a state.
The current House bill attempts to dodge the constitutional issue. It leaves a small federal district around the White House and federal buildings. The rest of the area would be the new state. Roger Pilson is a legal scholar with the Cato Institute. He says that strategy wouldn't satisfy the Constitution.
The Constitution, as I read it and many others read it and have read it for a long time, does not permit that.
Now, D.C. statehood is a partisan issue. The district votes reliably Democrat. At the committee hearing, Republican Representative James Comer called the move a Democrat power grab. A similar bill passed in the House last year on party lines. It didn't get through the Senate. Eleanor Holmes Norton is D.C.'s long-serving delegate in Congress. She notes that D.C. residents have been after equal voting rights for a long time.
D.C. residents have been fighting for voting rights in Congress and local autonomy for 219 years.
Unless Democrats get rid of the filibuster, they will probably have to keep waiting. Senate Republicans are not expected to support the bill. Fencing installed around the U.S. Capitol is being scaled back. Capitol Police tweeted all the fencing around the outer perimeter of the Capitol has been taken down. The public will again have access to the Capitol grounds, making way for the typical parade of joggers, cyclists, and others. Some streets near the building have also reopened to traffic. Capitol Police also tweeted the inner perimeter fencing remains, while the department works on security with law enforcement and Congress. The top U.S. Census official is asking for patience, though several state leaders say they've waited too long for the release of this year's once-in-a-decade census data. On Tuesday, Acting Director Ron Jarman blamed the holdup on the pandemic and the Trump administration. If census workers move at their current pace, the information will come out 5 months behind schedule. Ohio and Alabama are suing the Census Bureau, asking for the process to be accelerated. When asked if hiring more data reviewers would help, Jarman says that could actually cause the process to move more slowly. And still to come, we see that more big companies are considering leaving New York City over possible tax hikes. Many are looking to Florida for its low taxes and high quality of life. And a San Francisco cafe lets guests come inside for the first time in a year as business slowly creeps back. But not all of its normal customers are returning. Find out more on NTD News. Utah's governor signs a new measure into law. It requires smartphones and tablets sold in the state to include a filter blocking pornography. The governor signed the bill after what a spokesperson called careful consideration. Governor Spencer Cox told reporters recently that the surge of phone use has made it difficult for parents to police what their children watch. He said he thinks there's a problem with what pornography does to young brains. Now, lawmakers amended the bill to put off its activation until 5 other states approve similar laws. The American Civil Liberties Union of Utah argues the constitutionality of the bill wasn't considered enough and that it will likely be debated in court. The bill's sponsor, State Representative Susan Pulsifer, said the measure doesn't infringe on constitutional rights because adults can deactivate the filters. New York firms are considering leaving the city over high taxes. At least 20 companies already plan on moving to Florida. NTD's Jasmina Davis reports.
Top New York firms are considering leaving the city over a possible tax hike. Many have already left, including Case Capital Advisors.
It was absolutely driven by not only my new opportunity, but also driven by what I viewed as an insane tax structure in New York State and only getting worse.
This is happening as politicians propose $7 billion in new state taxes. New York is already one of the most tax-burdened states in the nation.
We'd raised our children in New York, right? I'd spent 40 years there. I participated in the whole New York lifestyle. But then when Trump was in office and they passed that Tax Reform Act, a lot of the big blue states got whacked in terms of deductibility of very high taxes.
One destination for many firms is Florida. Many want to move either part of their companies or their entire companies there, including Goldman Sachs and hedge fund Citadel and Elliott Management. Florida real estate firms seem pretty happy about this.
It's one of the most tax-friendly states, and the tax benefits of Florida, they just go on and on and on.
Florida residents don't pay a statewide income tax, only federal rates. New York's governor, on the other hand, wants to raise New York City's top rate to 14.7%, the highest in the nation on top of state taxes.
I'm seeing a lot of executives in a lot of the companies that I'm working with. A lot of them are moving there. Florida has an unbelievably high quality of life. It's like being on a vacation every single day. The weather's gorgeous.
Even JetBlue, founded in New York back in the 1990s, is considering shifting a number of headquarter roles to Florida. JetBlue said in a memo to staff it'll have a final plan later this year. Jasmina Davis, NTD News.
More than 250 New York business leaders have signed a letter to Governor Cuomo challenging the need for state tax increases. The leaders include the heads of financial companies like J.P. Morgan Chase, Blackstone, and big publisher Condé Nast. It looks like humans aren't the only ones enjoying the nice weather in New York City. In a rare sighting, 3 dolphins were spotted in the city's East River near Brooklyn. It's an unforgettable sight to see playful dolphins swimming along the river. One bystander took a video of the incident. You can see them swimming with the New York skyline and the clear blue sky in the background. Dolphins aren't usually spotted in this area, which makes this sighting so special. A year after the pandemic forced Chris and Amy Hilliard to temporarily close their 2 San Francisco Bay Area cafes, the news is suddenly good, with COVID-19 cases dropping sharply and staff getting vaccinated. But long term, the future of Oakland location remains unclear.
Bagpipes played outside Farley's Cafe in San Francisco as customers went inside to order their coffee drinks, the first time the cafe had allowed customers indoors in a year.
Natalie, we have an oat flat white, Natalie.
It's a happy note after a long struggle. Farley's Cafe is one of 2 spots owned by Chris and Amy Hilliard that shut down for the first 6 weeks of the health crisis.
Probably a month into the pandemic, I definitely say our future was in doubt. We just didn't know what was going to happen.
They've won six-figure paycheck protection loans to keep their staff on salary and got support from donors such as Golden State Warriors point guard Steph Curry. Now, as COVID-19 infections drop sharply in the area and most of his staff get vaccinated, customers are coming back, but so far it's more of a trickle than a wave.
Here in San Francisco, we're in a neighborhood, so sales were about 60% of pre-pandemic levels, and then I'd say it's slowly been increasing a little bit each week as the case counts have started to drop. Unfortunately, in Oakland, we're about 25 to 30% on any given day of the pre-pandemic levels because we rely on a lot of the office workers at that location, and they're just not there right now.
Cafes are open, but many are still working from home. Downtowns are still quiet. Some economics professors are calling this a donut effect. Once vibrant city centers are hollowing out.
So many spots just like ours that rely on the office workers being there, and I think we're going to all have to just see what happens come fall when there's a little bit more normalcy to life.
They plan to reopen indoor dining in late April, and they are expanding elsewhere, opening a Farley's branded location at the San Francisco International Airport next month.
And next up, personal protective equipment is posing a threat to the environment and wildlife. In Northern California, an environmental group is patrolling beaches for discarded gloves, masks, and disinfecting wipes. And big-name stores closed their doors while shooting incidents surge in Chicago. They're threatening living conditions in the city. More on that in just a moment.
The glory of piano masterpieces from the Baroque, classical, and Romantic periods. New Tang Dynasty Television invites you to join the 2021 NTD International Piano Competition. Together, we preserve and revitalize the art of authentic classical piano music. October 2021 in New York City. Register now at piano.ntdtv.com.
A drug bust update from the United States Coast Guard. The force says it seized nearly $330 million worth of illegal marijuana and cocaine from Pacific Ocean smugglers between January and March. The Coast Guard's Cutter Monroe ship offloaded the drugs yet Tuesday as the vessel's home port in Alameda, California. The large haul is a result of 15 interceptions on suspected smuggling boats by 3 Coast Guard cutters and 1 Navy vessel. The Coast Guard says it intercepted a group, on average, every 90 hours for 45 days straight. Before the Monroe arrived in Alameda, the crew transferred a dozen detainees to law enforcement in San Diego. Face masks and gloves have become part of everyday life for now, but discarded pieces of PPE pose a threat to the environment and wildlife. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
The Pacific Beach Coalition in California has been doing monthly beach cleanups just south of San Francisco for nearly 25 years. They say over the past year, in addition to the usual cigarette butts and food wrappers, they've seen a dramatic increase in discarded PPE supplies. Over the past year, they said they're picking up an average of 300 PPE items a month, including disposable masks, latex gloves, and disinfecting wipes.
Of the data that got recorded, we're finding like nearly 300 masks and gloves every month, right, on average. And that's just in what people are recording. And so the problem is horrible. They're all made of plastic. There's plastic in them.
A study last year in the Environmental Science and Technology Journal found that nearly 130 billion masks and 65 billion gloves are used around the world each month. A significant portion of that ends up in oceans. And the increase is already affecting wildlife. At the Marine Mammal Center in Marin County, a rescued seal pup is being taken to a recovery pool. The facility cares for all kinds of marine life, and biologists here are raising concerns that PPE pollution is becoming a major threat.
So if you are going to dispose of your mask, cutting these loops can actually make a really big difference. You then have the issue of ingestion as well, and that's when they're mistaking these things for food. And it can be either the full thing, or over time, as plastic degrades, it can become an issue.
Back on the beach, volunteers are collecting buckets of trash. The public is being asked to properly dispose of PPE and is encouraged to choose reusable cloth masks when possible. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
If you're dying to vent about your slow internet service to someone who might be able to help, now's your chance. The Federal Communications Commission wants to know how slow your internet is. The agency just announced a new outreach initiative on its website to gather consumer broadband experiences. They'll be asking customers directly for first-hand accounts about availability and disparities in internet access. It's part of the FCC's effort to improve the accuracy of its existing broadband maps. It will also impact future decisions about where service is needed. The quality of life in Chicago seems to be falling. Several retailers like Macy's closed their doors while the number of shootings remains high. NTD's Don Tran has the details.
While some parts of the U.S. recover from the virus pandemic, others are still feeling its impacts. The Magnificent Mile, Chicago's premier shopping district, lost quite a few retail stores. Macy's, which did business in the Mag Mile for 45 years, closed. Other names like Gap and Express also closed their locations. Some people visiting the shopping district are worried and disappointed.
I worry about the people that are employed with the stores and yeah, I do. I worry about all the monopolies, Amazon taking over, and because I like the smaller businesses, and it seems like those are the ones that are impacted.
I'm a writer, so I was really hoping to see the museum, the Writers Museum, and that is closed, and several other attractions are closed. I'm actually going to the 360 building, so that's the only thing I could book.
Others said they aren't that concerned about the closures.
I mean, look at the, it's still vibrant. There's still people on the streets. I would like to see the Magnificent Mile more of a draw for locals, though, instead of shopping, more, restaurants that locals might like.
But it's not just reduced business activity people in Chicago have to deal with. Citywide gun violence is continuing to soar. Shooting incidents reported in February were the highest they've been for the month in the last 4 years, according to the Chicago Police Department. One resident said the city should focus more on handling the gun violence.
Especially for the little kids that are getting shot.
Some residents also said there have been more homeless people in the streets. They hope for the day that things go back to the way they were. Don Tran, NTD News.
And just ahead, we hear from the Navy's head of command in the Indo-Pacific region. He says Communist China could seek to invade Taiwan sooner than expected, and that the U.S. needs to make urgent preparations. And the head of Tencent meets with antitrust regulators in China. It could be another sign of further crackdowns on homegrown tech companies by the regime. More on that on NTD News. The possibility of a Chinese invasion into Taiwan could happen sooner than you think. This is coming from the Admiral nominated to lead the U.S. military forces in the Indo-Pacific.
Last week, Admiral Davidson testified that he thinks the PLA may have the capability to effectively invade Taiwan in as soon as 6 years, maybe less. Do you agree with that view?
Senator, there's many numbers out there. I know Admiral Davidson said 6 years. You have to ask him where he made that assessment. There are spans from today to 2045. My opinion is this problem is much closer to us than most think, and we have to take this on, put those deterrence capabilities like PDI in place in the near term and with urgency.
Aquilino said the Chinese regime has its eyes set on Taiwan, which Beijing claims as part of its territory. Taiwan is a de facto independent nation state with its own democratically elected officials, military, constitution, and currency. The Chinese military has reportedly banned cars from Tesla. That's over concerns that their car cameras could be used for spying. And India is sounding the alarm over unconventional warfare coming from communist China. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us the story.
Tesla cars are famously high-tech, but spy cams aren't among their known features. Even so, the Chinese regime is banning the cars from military housing complexes. Reuters sources say Chinese officials are concerned that cameras in the cars could be used for espionage, and owners were reportedly told to park outside military property. The Wall Street Journal reports Chinese officials found the vehicles could record images of their surroundings. Now, more than a few car owners could be affected. Tesla sold over 18,000 Chinese-made vehicles just last month. This year, Tesla has been through a series of setbacks in China. 5 Chinese regulators summoned Tesla over quality issues in February. Chinese media also ramped up coverage of consumer complaints, and the company is recalling over 30,000 vehicles that have quality issues. India is warning against unconventional warfare tactics. That's after it suffered a severe power grid shutdown last October, something it's since blamed on Chinese hackers backed by the state. Mumbai is India's second largest city and its financial capital, but last autumn it was plunged into darkness, enduring its worst blackout in decades. Thousands of businesses shut down, trains were suspended, millions left without power. It later turned out India may have the Chinese regime to thank for it. Indian officials pointed to state-backed Chinese hackers for causing the power failure. The blackout happened while China and India were fighting over borders in the Himalayas. Both sides suffered soldier casualties. A U.S. research firm suggests the two incidents could have been connected, and that China was sending a message to Indian officials, back down on border claims. Now, India is looking to raise the issue on the global stage. Local media reports citing officials say the country may soon take the Chinese hacking case to international committees. The Mumbai blackout is the latest example of the Chinese regime's unconventional warfare. Without opening fire or sending in troops, the Communist Party can use cyber attacks to paralyze a city and use it as political leverage. India has learned that lesson the hard way, and now experts are calling on the Indian government to cut down on China-made hardware, both for the country's power grids and its critical rail system. American experts are raising similar concerns. The U.S. currently relies on at least 200 power transformers made in China. The hardware is essential for delivering electricity to homes and businesses. Back in 2018, one Chinese company claimed that their gear supported 10% of New York City's power grid. But last year, U.S. authorities seized the company's products, citing national security investigations. China-made transformers were also previously found to include extra electronics that shouldn't have been there. The Trump administration issued a related executive order last May. It aimed to reduce dependence on China for equipment used in the U.S. power grid. President Biden suspended that order on Inauguration Day. It remains to be seen whether he will reinstate it or not.
A coalition of human rights groups is urging Airbnb to drop its sponsorship for the International Olympic Committee. It's over the Beijing Winter Games next year and the Chinese regime's human rights abuses. Home-sharing platform Airbnb is one of the 15 leading sponsors of the International Olympic Committee, or IOC. In an open letter to Airbnb's CEO, Brian Chesky, a coalition of over 190 human rights groups argues that Airbnb is trying to promote tourism in China at the expense of Uyghurs and Tibetans. It says Airbnb is glossing over Communist China's horrifying human rights record. The communist regime has detained an estimated 1 million Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang region. Airbnb signed up to be a top sponsor for the IOC in late 2019. Human rights groups are also sending a similar message to other IOC sponsors. Some are calling for a boycott of the Beijing Winter Games. On the other hand, the IOC says it will not move the 2022 Winter Games out of Communist China and that it will maintain what it calls political neutrality. China's biggest social media and video games company, Tencent, reportedly met with China's antitrust watchdog officials this month to discuss compliance.
The boss of Chinese tech giant Tencent has had meetings with Beijing's antitrust regulators in what may be another sign of a crackdown on the country's digital economy. Tencent is China's biggest social media and video games company and is Hong Kong's most valuable stock, with a market capitalization of $776 billion. Sources say its founder, Pony Ma, visited the State Administration of Market Regulation office this month. At the meeting, which the sources say Ma had requested, the two parties discussed how Tencent could better comply with antitrust regulations. The sources say officials are looking into monopolistic practices by Tencent's WeChat, China's most popular messaging app. Tencent is not the first company to come into Beijing's crosshairs. Late last year, an antitrust investigation was launched against billionaire Jack Ma's Alibaba business empire. A blockbuster IPO for its Ant Financial platform, set to have been the biggest in history, was also suspended by Chinese regulators.
And just ahead, one of the world's largest ships runs aground and blocks the Suez Canal. Tugboats can't seem to dislodge the 1,300-foot ship to free the busy waterway. And floods in eastern Australia leave farm animals without access to food, so friends and neighbors are helping deliver feed and rescue other animals from the area. All that and more on NTD News.
If you're like me, and I think it's actually most of us, then you're getting really fed up with the nonsense going on inside the banking system. I mean, we've worked hard our entire lives to retire comfortably. We just recovered from the crash of 2008, and it seems like it's about to happen all over again. Look at the too-big-to-fail banks. They're only getting bigger as the Fed hands them trillions of dollars daily, while simple folks like you and me, we're only getting the short end of the stick. That's why I'm glad I found this book called The Bank Failure Survival Guide. Give us a call, and we'll send you a free copy with no obligations whatsoever. Just one American to another, telling you about some options that you might not have considered. Call 866-239-2619 today for your free copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide. That's 866-239-2619.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Eight tugboats were attempting on Wednesday to free one of the world's largest container ships, an over 430-yard behemoth that ran aground in the Suez Canal, blocking one of the world's most important waterways.
One of the largest shipping containers in the world, a 400-meter and 200,000-ton vessel, has run aground in the Suez Canal, blocking one of the most important waterways in the world. Around 12% of trade by volume passes through the canal, which connects Europe and Asia. It's also a major source of hard currency for Egypt. Cargo trucks were lining the port entrance and ships were being diverted to an older canal after the vessel called the Ever Given ran aground on Tuesday morning, according to the Bernard Schulte Ship Management, or BSM. The Canal Authority says the mishap occurred because of bad weather. 8 tugboats were attempting to free the canal on Wednesday morning, but some delays to shipping are expected. BSM said all the crew are safe and accounted for and that there have been no reports of injuries or pollution.
We have an update on the historic flood in Australia. The bodies of 2 individuals have been recovered. Here are the details.
2 deaths caused by Australia's worst floods in decades were reported on Wednesday. It's the first deaths linked to wild weather in recent days. The bodies of 2 men were found in separate cars trapped by floodwaters in Sydney's northwest and in the neighbouring state of Queensland. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Scott Morrison flew over many of the affected areas of Sydney on Wednesday and pledged to support those affected by the disaster.
The damage will indeed be great, and the government will be supporting each and step of the way as we go through the clean-up and the recovery process in partnership with the New South Wales Government.
Torrential rain has sparked flash flooding, bulging rivers and major dam overflow. More than 40,000 people have been forced to evacuate. The scale of the damage is still being tallied, but the country's peak insurance body estimates damage claims to around $193 million across the states of New South Wales and Queensland. And it's not over yet. Forecasters said the weather system will shift to the island state of Tasmania on Wednesday.
Australia's torrential rains are also causing major problems for resident animals. Many farm animals have been stranded with limited food, but friends and neighbors are making special deliveries by boat to help. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
This barge full of hay arrived at a rural property in Sydney's outer suburbs on Wednesday. As it approached, horses there started eating straight off the boat. The delivery is one of many going to areas impacted by severe flooding. It's the worst recorded in Australia's east in more than half a century. Resident Deanne Thompson said the horses had been shifted to higher ground since the rain started last week, but their feed options have been limited.
We've got plenty of grass on the up here, but this is what they love the most. So yes, it's been over a week now, hasn't it? It's been a week that we've been moving them up and up and up and up.
There have also been a number of animal rescues, with boats used to move dogs, cattle, and even an emu away from the floodwaters. Thompson's home is still standing, but road access has been cut.
This is insane. So we've been hoping that the house was going to withhold, and it has, so we are very, very fortunate, unlike some. But all the creature comforts are all gone, but that's okay, isn't it? It's okay.
More than 40,000 people have been forced to flee their homes in Australia due to flash floods. Authorities issued new evacuation orders on Wednesday for residents in Sydney's western regions. They've been directed to move to safe zones. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
We have an update on vaccines in Europe. It appears the European Union will now continue to be able to use vaccines for themselves, instead of sending them to other areas that may not need them as much. Here are the details.
The European Union is finalizing emergency legislation which could block exports of COVID-19 vaccines to the UK and other countries with higher vaccination rates. The move marks a sharp escalation in the EU's response to a floundering vaccination rollout at home, beset by delivery delays, supply issues, and a third wave of the disease. According to one EU official, the new regulation is aimed at making vaccine trade reciprocal and proportional, so the EU can no longer export more than it imports. The EU has watched doses manufactured in its territory being used to advance vaccination campaigns elsewhere, like Israel and Britain, while its own program has faltered, much to the anger of its population. The UK stands to lose the most by the new rules, as the biggest benefactor of EU exports thus far. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said Tuesday the UK did not believe in imposing vaccine blockades and would work with EU authorities to ensure the delivery of vaccines it has ordered. The new regulation will likely hit vaccine maker AstraZeneca, which found itself in hot water with the EU after announcing a steep cut in supplies to the bloc in January, citing production problems. It could also affect vaccines made by Johnson & Johnson, which has announced delays in its second quarter supplies to the EU.
The government has revealed details of what it says is the biggest shakeup to the British military since the Cold War. It means fewer tanks, more robotic ships, and a new role for the Royal Marines.
More robots in the sky, but fewer boots on the ground. That's part of the government's ambitious military refit.
The armed forces, working with the rest of government, must think and act differently. They will no longer be held as a force of last resort, but become a more present and active force around the world.
The budget is up by 14% over the coming 4 years, but troop numbers will drop to record lows.
The Army's increased deployability and technological advantage will mean that greater effect can be delivered by fewer people. I've therefore taken the decision to reduce the size of the Army from today's current strength of 76,500 trade-trained personnel to 72,500 by 2025.
The government described the official defence review as the biggest shake-up since the Cold War.
It marks a shift from mass mobilisation to information age speed, readiness and relevance for confronting the threats of the future.
It's part of a broader review of foreign policy. The government is pumping money into developing military space and cyber capabilities, along with unmanned aerial systems. But the new plans will also reduce tanks, and logistical warhorses like the Hercules transport aircraft will be retired early. That raised concerns among some military analysts.
Historically, the British Army had 1,200 main battle tanks at the start of the First Gulf War, 1990. It's now going to be reduced from a current fleet of 227 to just 148. So that's enough for 2 armoured regiments, which is almost, it's not even a token amount. It's not even a token force. There is very little you can do with 2 armoured regiments in the grand scheme of things.
Meanwhile, the Royal Marines are becoming SAS-style Special Operations Forces, the future Commando Force. They will be joined by another Special Ops regiment, the Rangers.
So it's this much more light footprint, expeditionary in nature deployment capability the Marines will have going forwards.
The MOD wants them to tackle what is called grey zone competition. That means hustling for advantage with the likes of China and Russia without firing a shot.
The notion of war and peace as binary states have given way to a continuum of conflict, requiring us to prepare our forces for more persistent global engagement and constant campaigning.
That grey area between war and competition includes information warfare, such as online disinformation campaigns launched by China and Russia.
With the Special Forces almost leading on this in collaboration with both MI6 and GCHQ, you're blending traditional capabilities and non-conventional capabilities with the intelligence and the cyberspace. So it's very interesting. Going forwards, absolutely.
The Navy too is being refitted to face threats of a digital age. 13 minesweepers will be replaced with a fleet of robots. And a new spy ship will be built to protect the underseas cables that keep the nation hooked up to the internet.
And coming up, Disney delays the release of its latest Marvel superhero movie, Black Widow. The company had hopes for a healthy summer movie season, but the box office hasn't returned to normal. More on that in just a minute. Disney on Tuesday delayed the worldwide release of Marvel Studios' film Black Widow by 2 months until July. Theater operators had hoped the blockbuster release would kick off a summer blockbuster season in early May and draw crowds back.
Any hopes that this year's round of blockbuster films would kickstart the summer movie season have been dashed.
I was an Avenger.
Disney announced on Tuesday it was again delaying the release of Marvel's Black Widow by 2 months to July. The film, starring Scarlett Johansson, will also be offered simultaneously on its Disney Plus streaming service. Shares of AMC Entertainment, the world's largest cinema operator, tumbled 16% after the announcement. As part of a massive shake-up of its movie slate, Disney is delaying a whole handful of films, including Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, as well as Free Guy.
I really want to kiss you. Is that...
In another blow for box office sales, the company is focusing more on its streaming service. Pixar's animated coming-of-age adventure Luca will launch exclusively on Disney+. And Cruella, which hasn't been delayed, will also be a simultaneous release. Other Hollywood studios have made similar moves to Disney. Warner Brothers is offering all of its 2021 theatrical films on the HBO Max streaming service on the same day. It has, however, agreed to keep to a more traditional release pattern in 2022. But like Paramount and Universal, it will be reducing the number of days films are shown exclusively in cinemas.
Let's turn our attention to health now. Meditation practices are seeing a boost in popularity. They offer a potent option to those seeking peace and healing in these trying times.
Welcome to Strong Mind and Body, I'm Gina Marie. Meditation is a practice of calming and focusing the mind. There are a variety of methods and some of them go back thousands of years. Now, the modern world is seeing a surge of interest in this quiet, ancient practice. According to Dr. Margaret Trey, a meditation researcher and an integrative counselor who uses meditation in therapy, there have been a wealth of studies over the past 50 years validating the health and wellness benefits of this practice. She points to studies that show increases in happiness and positive thoughts. It has also been found to decrease anxiety and substance abuse while improving resilience and general psychological well-being. Trey wanted to examine a meditation practice known as Falun Gong. She turned to a research method synonymous with social science, a survey. In 2007, as part of her doctoral dissertation at the University of South Australia, Trey administered an online survey comparing the health and wellness effects of Falun Gong practitioners measured against a control group of non-practitioner participants. The results detailed in Trey's latest book, The Effects of Falun Gong on Health and Wellness, strongly suggest that practicing Falun Gong has a positive effect on both physical and emotional health. One reason that Trey wanted to research Falun Gong is that it has seen very little scientific investigation. Falun Gong is the largest and fastest growing meditative practice in Chinese history. The promise of better health was a big reason why people took it up. Up until the Chinese government outlawed the practice in 1999, Chinese officials were singing its praises, claiming that it could save the country a bundle in healthcare costs. According to one estimate, if 100 million people practiced Falun Gong, China could save 100 billion yuan per year in medical fees. Independent large-scale health surveys conducted in 5 Chinese provinces helped support this claim. Researchers found that more than 90% of respondents, or 31,000 individuals, reported having a variety of illnesses before they started Falun Gong, and 98% of them reported gaining significant health benefits as a result of adopting the practice. Researchers continue to validate this trend. A 2013 study from the United States examining the cognitive and physiological effects of Falun Gong showed that the practice boosted energy levels and mood and elicited lasting psychological benefits. In addition to a seated meditation and 4 standing exercises, Falun Gong practitioners also strive to meet a high moral standard in daily life. At the heart of the practice is the book Zhuan Falun, Turning the Law Wheel, which discusses how to live by the principles of Jin, Shan, and Ren, which is truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Thanks for watching.
And that's all for now. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.